Hello, leaders. This is Dr. Eugene Dilan with the Dilan Consulting Group, and welcome to Safe to Speak, where every voice matters every time. Today, I'm going to talk to you about psychological safety. But before I do that and give you some definitions and things, I want to share a little bit of a personal story. Because I think that it's very easy to take a term like psychological safety and say it's the newest flavor of the day. And yet, for me, psychological safety is actually something that is deeply personal. Like many of you, not all of you, some of you for sure, I grew up in a home where children were to be seen and not heard, where spilling my milk could get me yelled at or maybe even smacked. And I don't share that because I need sympathy or empathy or any of that. I share that because I know the impact that that personally had on me, from everything from my posture to my willingness to speak up and share my thoughts. And while that's a personal example, I know that what we grew up with oftentimes informs the way that we show up at work. Now, I was lucky. I had teachers who mentored me. I was involved in student government, theater, and had many other places where I learned to have a voice and speak up, including a good dose of therapy over the years. But not everyone is as fortunate. And so to me, psychological safety isn't just a flavor of the day. It's actually something that is meaningful and ultimately essential if you want to get the best out of your people. So with that, let me share a little bit about what Amy Edmondson's theory of psychological safety is. And basically, psychological safety means that people feel safe to speak up. People feel safe to share ideas, to ask questions, to challenge, even to make mistakes. And while people making mistakes might seem like a bad thing, it's actually even worse when people don't talk about the mistakes because they don't get addressed. Sometimes if there's a lot of fear in the environment, they actually even get hidden. And so I want to just really underscore that through all of her research, Amy Edmondson really found that at the end of the day, the primary or most important factor is psychological safety. And that was demonstrated through the Aristotle project at Google, where they did research on 180 plus teams. That's a lot of people across the enterprise. And a whole stack of different variables came up around what would be helpful in terms of psychological safety. But the bottom line is this, was that psychological safety rated as number one of all of the variables that you could potentially pay attention to in the workplace in terms of helping people to be more effective. Now, let me bring this home a little bit and kind of make it a little bit more real in terms of what's important here. And again, the important part here is that it's not about being nice. It's not about avoiding conflict. In fact, candor and taking risk are essential if you're to get the best output, the best product, the best strategy. You got to have that carefrontation, as I would call it, that realness in dialogue in order to bring out the good stuff. But what is important here is that without psychological safety, you're not going to get high performance. You're not going to get the trust that you need in an environment in order to help people to do better. And so I guess what else can I say about this in terms of psychological safety? I can say that essentially it's the foundation. It is the thing that really I think is going to be the differentiator in terms of helping your people to lean in, to be comfortable taking risks, to be vulnerable, admitting mistakes, And the sooner that you can create this, the better that it will be for everyone. And what's important is to understand is that this is not about an individual person, because each of us has our own communication styles and approaches and family histories. It is about creating an environment for the entire group, because just one person speaking up is not proof that everyone feels safe speaking up. And so it's key that you as a leader understand that your individual behavior over time shapes the group norms and over time shapes the culture of the team, meaning that somehow the way that you show up has got to communicate that it is safe for people. And it's important for you to recognize that this shows up all the times, and sometimes a little sarcasm can be just the thing that shuts it down. Somebody speaks up and shares an idea, and off the cuff, you or somebody else says, "Oh, we've tried that before. That's a stupid idea," and you shut the person down. A person might let that go once or twice, but 2 or 3 times of that happening, and a learned helplessness, for lack of a better way of explaining it, if we go back to psychology, is what becomes what happens. And so people learn that it's better not to speak up. Those little micro moments, those micro interactions that we think were meaningless to somebody else at the receiving end actually were monumental in that they've learned that it isn't safe. And so what's important here is that, again, I really want to underscore is that if your team feels psychologically safe, they're going to be willing to admit to errors early. They're going to brainstorm freely. They're going to challenge decisions in a very respectful way. And ultimately, what this is going to do is that it's going to get you to better solutions. And that's what it's all about. Ultimately, it's about trying to get to a place where you have better solutions. So without it, what you run the risk of is people not feeling safe and leaving. And so again, I could go on about this, but I fear I'm starting to repeat myself. So I'm gonna leave it there and say that's it for today's episode. If you found this helpful, please share. Share your comments in your comments or your takeaways in the discussion section. If you have questions or suggestions for other topics that I might briefly talk about, please send them. Otherwise, follow us on social media. Just search Dilan Consulting Group, and you'll find us on nearly every platform. So see you next time, and remember that business is human, and every voice matters every time. I'll talk to you soon.